Joshua. Extremely informative. As always, we move over to Europe, where in Moscow a powerful display of unity. Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Kremlin, calling him a dear friend as the two marked 80 years since the Allied victory over Nazi Germany. Xi's visit is a major diplomatic boost for Putin as the Russian leader continues to frame the war in Ukraine as a battle against modern-day neo-Nazism. Ukraine and the West reject that claim, calling it a false pretext for an invasion. Putin thanked Xi for understanding with Russia, saying both countries now defend historical truth and stand firmly against modern fascism. Xi echoed support, taking aim at what he called unilateralism and bullying, a clear swipe at the United States. As the war in Ukraine grinds on, the timing of Xi's visit is seen as strategic. China remains Russia's biggest trading partner and economic lifeline as the two deepen their no-limits partnership signed just before the Ukraine war began. Xi is also expected to sign new deals during his stay, while 24 foreign leaders gather in Moscow for Victory Day events. Let's listen in to what the two leaders had to say.
Вместе с китайскими друзьями твердо стоим на страже исторической правды, защищаем память о событиях военных лет, противодействуем современным проявлениям неонацизма и милитаризма.
面对国际上的单边主义逆流和强权霸凌行径，中方将同俄方一道，肩负起作为世界大国和联合国安理会常任理事国的特殊责任，挺膺担当，共同弘扬正确二战史观，维护联合国权威和地位。
Развиваем наши связи во благо народов обеих стран и не против кого бы то ни было. Наши отношения носят равноправный, взаимовыгодный и неконъюнктурный характер.
立足世界百年变局，持续深化政治互信和战略协作，在国际事务中保持密切协调和配合，为变乱交织的国际形势注入宝贵的稳定性和。
We are joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute located in Tokyo, Japan, to discuss this further. Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us as always. I was wondering if you could delve a bit into the relationship, both the benefits and the negatives, where the two countries, both Russia and China, align together. What do they both get out of the friendship that Russia and China have?
Firstly, is what kind of interest China has, and secondly, I will explain that Russia has. Firstly, for China, currently China has influence toward Russia because under the economic section, Russia rely on China to getting the products for the other part of the world, and China is the main customer to buy energy resources of Russia. So that's why if Xi Jinping visit Moscow and try to show his presence, in this case, not only practically but also emotionally, China can show Russia that China is good supporter for Russia and China expand influence in Russia. That is China's interest. So for Putin, what is, of course, they can continue Russia's aggression in Ukraine. In the battlefield, Russia is advancing, even if it's very limited and steadily, but still advancing. So Russia wants to continue this war. That's why Russia needs China. China is, I have already explained why China is influential to Russia. So in this case, yes, for Russia to continue war, to expand their territory, China's support is needed. But at the same time, there is a weak point or concern also exists. For China, if China show strong presence in Russia, Of course, other countries around the world will see China and Russia is one set, and if Russia continues to invade Ukraine, this is not just Russia's war. This is war of China. So that's why China's image will decline. That is concern. China do not want to be the target of the U.S. sanction or Western countries' sanction. So that's why this is a concern for China. Concern for Putin is, if Putin rely on China, in this case, many people in the world start to see Xi Jinping is leader and Putin is follower. In this case, Putin will lose the influence. That is concern. So they want to show the cooperation as a strong band, right, something like that. But at the same time, they want to keep their stance as a independent countries. That is, so balance is needed for them, and they try to show the strong bond. At the same time, they try to show that they are independent. Something like that, I think.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, obviously want to address the elephant in the room. This obviously Xi arrives with the backdrop of the Ukraine conflict occurring in the country he's just arrived in. The EU and other Western countries labelled China as a key enabler of Russia's war effort. The Chinese have even admitted to sending troops to fight against Ukraine on Russia's side. Does Beijing recognise any reputational cost if that narrative hardens, and in Europe and the West in general?
Of course, China chooses one kind of the ambiguity policy. In front of Russia, China tried to show they are ally of Russia, support of Russia. But in front of the Western country, China tried to show they are separated from Russia. So ambiguity is the weapon China is believing. So of course, reality is, yes, view from Russia's economy, China is strong supporter. And view from the weapon, yes, China is gradually expanding their influence. So that's why, indeed, China tilting toward Russia. But at the same time, China tried to hide this reality by showing the attitude as an independent great power, not and Russia is independent, separate country, separate group. Yes, Russia rely on China, but Russia is different country. But that kind of the stance he want to show, Xi Jinping want to show, and that is the current situation, I believe.
Yes, and Dr. Nagao, this obviously comes as Vladimir Putin announces a 3-day ceasefire in the country. Western analysts say this ceasefire is timed for visiting dignitaries such as Xi Jinping rather than a genuine de-escalation. Does China quietly accept that framing, and how might it affect future Chinese mediation efforts?
Yes, of course, if Xi Jinping, China is a mediator for Russia, of course, this is advantage for Russia. But at the same time, China do not want to end this war, I believe, because if Russia continue to invade Ukraine, United States need to share some certain resources to support Ukraine. This means that the same resources US cannot use against China. So that's why China want to continue this war. Indeed, when we check the weapon, ammunition, US is sending ammunition to the Ukraine and Israel, but China did not send the ammunition to Russia. This means that China is keeping ammunition to start war, but US is losing the stock of ammunition.
Yes.
So this means that China is getting the advantage because of the ammunition. China used one kind of invading Taiwan card or something. And if China really want to invade Taiwan, of course, because of the ammunition, it is possible. So that's why this ammunition-related issue is indeed very important So US try to recover this stock of ammunition now, but at the same time, if Russia's aggression continue, in this case, what should the US do? That is a matter for the United States, and this is advantage for China.
Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us. As always, your very valuable insight. We move on now.